Well, hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to this webinar, Leadership Coaching and Business with Joseph O'Connor. My name is Abigail and well, thank you very much for being with us today and so on time. I know many of you are in Indonesia, so good afternoon to you. Myself, I am talking from Ireland, and Joseph, I believe, is in Great Britain, so it's rather earlier for us today. Before we start, I would like to ask you to raise your hands to let us know that you can hear us properly, so we know we are ready to start the webinar with Joseph O'Connor, who's very kindly with us today. Good, great, thank you so much. As I said before, my name is Abigail, and I would be here to assist you in case you need anything. You can just type a question on the questions box, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Good, we are ready to start, so let me introduce Joseph O'Connor. Hi Joseph, thank you for being with us today.
Hi Abigail, hi everybody. Good morning. Well, good morning at least from England and Ireland. And I know that there are many of you in Indonesia and Southeast Asia on this call, so it's really great to talk with you. And I guess you're into the afternoon now at the normal webinar time. Whereas here in London, it's kind of cold and misty and autumny. So, this is, as you can see, a webinar about coaching and particularly about leadership coaching. So let me tell you a little bit about myself for those of you that may not know me, a little bit about what we're going to be doing, and we shall go from there. I reckon I'll probably talk for about an hour, but there'll be opportunities to hear from you guys if you have any questions. And then we'll do a kind of question and answer session at the end. And this webinar is also kind of inspired by the fact that the ICC coaching training, the international certification, is going to be for the first time in Indonesia in December. And I know that Irene Corrie, whose institute is sponsoring that, is on the call now. So hi Irene, and I know you can't answer, but I know you're there, and thanks for doing some of the organisation here. My name's Joseph O'Connor. With my wife and partner Andrea Lages, we formed the ICC, the International Coaching Community, about 12 years ago, 13 years ago now, when we were living in São Paulo in Brazil. And our idea was that we wanted a group of coaches that had high skill levels and also high ethical levels. These two must go together in coaching if it's ever going to be an accepted profession, especially in business. And we took the name because those three names, those three words in the name, perfectly describe what we're trying to do. International, it's all over the world. It has about 9,000 certified coaches in over 60 countries in every continent. Coaching, as we know, we're going to be talking about that. What is coaching and how does it apply to leadership? And community. And community is a group of people who want to be together because of shared values. It's not about a group of people that has to be together or organized together or anything like that. It's about a group that want to be together because they share values. And that's why we named it the International Coaching Community. I'm an executive coach. I also do coach training. I'll be training in Indonesia in December. I guess that many of you on the call will be in Indonesia or that area. I guess many of you will be managers, many of you will be coaches, perhaps psychologists, trainers, consultants. So welcome to everybody. I hope that there'll be something for everybody here. I want to give you some tools, some ideas, and I want to talk a little bit about coaching, how it applies to leadership, and so that you go away from the end of this hour and a half or so with a good idea about coaching and some ideas and tools to use. Just to give you a little bit of history, because I think it's important, I spent many years as a classical guitar teacher I was a concert player of classical guitar, and also I taught many good players. And during that time, one thing puzzled me, and that was that I would have very good players playing to me in my studio when I was a teacher. And if I wasn't there, they would play very well. And they could give me recordings of them playing maybe in their own house alone. And these would be wonderful. And yet, when they played to me, the teacher, or when they gave concerts to an audience, a live audience, they invariably didn't do as well. They couldn't play as well. They tended to make more mistakes. They also reported that they felt much more nervous, which leads to mistakes, of course, but for many of them it wasn't a pleasant experience, whereas playing the guitar is a pleasant experience just on its own. So it made me wonder what was going on in their mind, because their competence, their skill, doesn't change from day to day. In fact, it gets better. And yet, in certain contexts, in certain situations, like giving a concert, they played much worse. It seemed like their skill deserted them. And this has got to be about what we might call the inner game, coming from The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Galway, which was one of the books that really started the coaching movement back in the 1960s, beginning of the 70s. The inner game, the idea that whatever you're doing, whether it's competitive sport or talking to a group of managers or giving a training or anything like that, you, of course, engage with the people, but you also engage with yourself. And in some ways, yourself can be your worst enemy. And it's your worst enemy because, unfortunately, it knows all your weaknesses and can kind of trip you up in a way that other people can't. So my question was always, well, what happens here? What happens in people's minds that they can't give their best, particularly in highly important situations where it's really important for them to give their best? And this applies to playing guitar, it applies to giving presentations in business, giving trainings, having a difficult conversation with someone, whether it's a personal friend or in business. It applies to everything. So one of the important things about coaching for me is how can we release those sorts of beliefs, perhaps, assumptions, ideas, habits of thinking that we have that can, in worst case, cripple us and usually at least cause some problems in those sort of situations. And it also made me wonder, once I started to do coaching in business, supposing in your business on a Monday morning, half of the people didn't turn up. This would be a disaster. You would wonder how on earth you could keep the business going. Only half the people. And yet, the next Monday morning or another day, or Tuesday, it's quite possible that everybody shows up, but working at half their capability for all sorts of reasons. And we don't notice this. It's invisible. We don't know how far our workforce, the people in business, ourselves, are working at our full potential, our full capacity, our best self. Because it's invisible. And one of the things that coaching does is to kind of probe that invisibility a little bit, either in teams or in individuals, to really find out, well, what is your potential and how far towards it are you? And to bring out as much as possible so that you can be the best you can be, especially in difficult situations where it's very important that you do your best. And this, of course, is also the function of leaders. Leaders need to do that. They need to inspire people. They need to make sure that people are at their best. They need to give people a vision. So leadership coaching, coaching for leaders, is a really important part of coaching. because by coaching a leader, it can have a huge impact on a business in a way that coaching one or two people in that business won't have. This is why I really love and enjoy leadership coaching and executive coaching. And of course, coaches develop leaders. So this is what we're going to be doing, how coaching can help business and develop leaders. And it's right now, right here and now, for you to take away and use whenever you want to. So then, if we move on a little bit, just to think about, well, what is coaching anyway? There's many definitions. I'm just going to go through some of the things that I think are interesting and important. And the first one is this little definition. It's a process of exploring the present and designing the future. So first of all, it's a process. In other words, it's something that's ongoing. And a coach is someone who helps the person with a relationship, with a process. It's a bit like running beside someone who's, running on the field. The coach is running beside them. It's not kind of talking to them in their tracksuit once they've finished, but you're actually in the process of doing what they want to do, what they need to do. Of exploring the present and designing the future. So you can't really design a future unless you know where you are in the present. So coaching focuses on those two areas. It focuses on the present because you need to be present. A coach needs to be in the present moment. We talk about coaching presence, being there. And what's happening right now, and what the leader is thinking and feeling right now, and what sort of habits they have right now that are constraining them. Although these habits, of course, may have been built up in the past. But coaches don't particularly go to the past. Whatever has happened in the past has happened. It can explain, it can inform, but it's not really worth going over very much. So what's happening now? And then from that, well, how do you want things to be? So that you design the future. And this is, of course, particularly important for leaders. Leaders are people who design the future. Leaders are people who can look into the future as visionaries, think about what is possible, and then inspire people with that vision of what is possible, get them on board, and lead them towards that future. So that's one definition of coaching. There's plenty more, but that's a pretty good one. Here's another one: helping people to think better by exploring their values and assumptions. So thinking, when we talk about thinking, this is cognitive. This is an ability that we all have to analyze, to remember, to structure our thinking, to see what's going to happen. And that's very important. And it's also worth remembering that none of that goes on without emotion, the emotional tinge that we all have. So whatever we're thinking about, there's always some kind of feeling. May not be very strong. It may not be worth taking into account sometimes. But at other times, it's very much worth taking into account. And emotions and feelings are the fuel of what drives businesses, what drives leaders, what drives everybody. If people don't turn up at work, it's because they don't have motivation, they don't have movement. Emotion means movement. Motivation, same idea, means movement. So people don't turn up when they're not motivated, when then it's not important to them. And leaders motivate and inspire people by showing them what's important to them and engaging their emotions. Of course, it's got to make sense from the thinking point of view, but also in order to engage people's emotions as well. And that's how you inspire people. So to think better, and also to to feel better in a way. And this comes from values. Values are what's important to you. Values are where the emotions come from. We do things because they're important. We have possibly thousands of goals, thousands of outcomes that we could pursue as individuals and as a business. And of those we pick a few because there's only so many hours in a day. And the few that we pick is down to the values that we have, what's important. So values and assumptions are the ideas that we start off with. So you could call them beliefs, you could call them, we presuppose things. It's what we think about before we even start. And of course these can be limiting and often are, which is why coaching particularly focuses on those things. And coaching solves problems in a sense by questioning the assumptions that people bring with them, because a problem is only a problem if there are assumptions that stop you from acting in a certain way. It's a bit like somebody who's kind of built a wall around themselves and then asks the coach, well, how do I get out? So the coach basically says over a period of time, shows them how to dismantle the bricks that they've built up in the first place. And then, well, they're free and they have more choices and more options. They can do what they like. So coaching is about exploring goals, it's about exploring values, and it's about exploring assumptions or habits of thinking. And one more little definition, it's an art because it's about people, and whenever you're talking about people you're always talking about something artistic, and science. So it's a structure, it's a methodology, and this is something that's very important for us in the ICC training, that it's not just about tools, but it's about when do you use those tools. Because there's a lot of coaching that gives you a lot of tools, but then you have no idea. It's like peering into your toolbox and looking at these wonderful tools and thinking, well, this really looks great, but when do I use it? And do I use it before or after this one? So that structure that comes from the science and the methodology of coaching is very important, and it informs the art of helping people to achieve what they want. So it's about goals, but do not think is possible. So then we're back to the assumptions, the beliefs, the habits of thinking that constrain them so that they don't think it's possible, so that the coach can then help them to dismantle the wall that they've built around them. So this is true for leaders. It's about clearing the vision of leaders so that they can see beyond the wall, and helping them to inspire people. Because we can never know what is not possible. We can only say what hasn't been done yet. So we can never prove that something's impossible. We can only say that it hasn't been done yet. So that's some general ideas around coaching. And coaching basically has 3 questions. First one is, where are we now? So we're talking about the present moment. What's happening right now? What sort of habits of thinking do we have right now? What's your vision right now? Where do we want to be? So that's about goals, about designing the future, about finding out where we're going, and particularly for leaders, about getting their vision. And the third question is, what's in the way? Because if it was that simple, if it was like, well, here we are and that's where we want to go, let's go. But it isn't usually that simple. If it was that simple, then the client, you wouldn't get clients as a coach. You know, the leaders would be fine without coaches. But there are some obstructions. There are some problems, either real or imagined. There's it can seem like a tightrope walking, with risks and consequences of falling, but a wonderful vision ahead. So those are our three basic questions which coaches deal with and which leaders deal with as well. They need to appreciate and connect with people in the present moment, otherwise no one's going to follow them. They need to have a clear vision, an inspiring vision, an emotional and motivating vision of where they're going. And then they need to be able to clear away the obstacles that's stopping them. And they need, of course, communication skills in order to communicate that vision. So that's a little bit about coaching in the general way. And this is what we do in our ICC course. Also coaching, if you think about coaching and being a good coach, it comes from three elements really. And the balance of these elements can change. The first is the commitment that you have as a coach, but particularly the commitment that the client has. And this is very clear for when we think about leadership as well, because although we think about leaders and leadership, there would be no leaders without followers, and there would be no leadership without followership. So, you know, a leader with no followers is, well, not a leader, are they? They're not leading anything. They may be very kind of trying to be inspiring. They may have a vision. They may do a lot of talking. But if nobody's following them, they're not leaders. So that ability to inspire commitment from people so that the people are prepared to follow them, then that's really important. There's a little story about two speakers. The original story has them as Greek speakers. I can't remember their names, but one was universally said to be a really great speaker, and when he used to talk to the crowds, people used to say, "What a fantastic speech, that was amazing, I really incredible, fantastic." And the other speaker, when they spoke, people would say, "Okay, let's go and do something." Let's act. It's almost like they didn't see how good the speaker was because they were so inspired and motivated to do something. And that's an important part of leadership. It's what they say, there's a Chinese saying that with a good leader, people say, well, you know, that's a good leader, that was great. And with a really great leader, people say, we did it ourselves. We did it ourselves. And that's what leaders do, and that's about commitment. So that's a really important part of coaching, and something that we need to go into. The second part is the coaching presence, the ability of the coach to listen and be present for the client. And this is the same for leaders. They need to listen, they need to be present, available for the people that are following them. Leaders who are distant, leaders who are not there for people, they soon lose their followers. So commitment, present, and then of course the other thing is the skills, the skills of coaching, the communication skills. That's really important that we go into in detail, particularly of course questions, because questions are the lifeblood of coaching. A good question is what a coach needs to do, because a good question will get a good answer. And in any coaching training also, and in any leadership training too, people get knowledge, of course, that's important. People get skills, the ability to do things, even more important. And as well, people develop themselves. People get an aspect of growing in themselves, of that kind of self-development, of that being aspect. That's also very important. And I've seen this so many times in our coaching training, how people develop with knowledge, how people develop with skills, but that kind of magic ingredient of people feeling more themselves at the end of the training. So that's a little bit about coaching in general. So why then aren't businesses falling over themselves to engage coaches? What a good idea! Let's have a coach now. Let's get all our leaders coaching. Why isn't this happening? Well, there are a number of reasons, but I think the main one is, first of all, it's expensive to invest in leadership coaching or training. The short-term costs are high. It's not free. It costs money, and in difficult financial times, then it's hard to find the budget because it doesn't come high up on the level of priorities. It's kind of ironic in a way that when businesses are doing very well, that's the time that they tend to invest in training and leadership coaching because they have the spare money. But that's really the time when you don't really need to because you're doing well. And then when the business starts failing, that's the time when you need to invest in leadership coaching because that's when you need it. And yet, ironically, that's exactly the time when businesses cut back on those sort of coaching and training and development costs because they say they can't afford it. So there's a kind of a twisted logic there that means that sometimes businesses engage coaches at times when they don't need them so much, and they don't engage coaches at times when they really need them, and that's a pity. But cost is an important issue, for sure. The second is that there needs some quality control. Of course, there are many coaches, many coaching trainings, and not all of them have the same quality. So how do you know? How do you know you're getting a good one? Well, you need to do your homework, certainly, but certainly from the ICC point of view, there is international quality control. And this is one very important thing that we built in from the start. Short-term costs need long-term benefits, and you need to measure those. You need to have some way of measuring those. So that's a little bit about the obstructions, as it were, about what might go wrong or why businesses wouldn't engage coaching. So then let's think a little bit about leadership and what is leadership. It's a vision. It's about seeing ahead into the future, so we've talked about that. We've talked about the coach's ability to do that, to help leaders do that. Leaders need presence. They've got to be there for people, and we talked a little bit about that. That's an important aspect of coaching. Leaders make people think. They help to develop people. And they tell a story. They tell a story that's inspiring, a story that people want to hear, a story that people want to be part of. Now, there's a lot of leadership literature. Leadership, I think, probably has the most number of words and books of any topic in business. There are libraries and libraries and libraries of books on leadership, different models of leadership. But I think in the end you can probably boil it down to these. And that telling a story. Stories are engaging. Stories have a start, you care about them, you care about the people, they have a trajectory, and they have an ending. And you always want to know what the ending is. You know, is it a happy ending or not? And the ability for leaders to be able to tell a story, a story that makes sense, a story that people want to be part of, is an amazing skill. And of course, leaders need communication skills to do that. So that's a little bit on leadership. And so what do leaders do? Well, they influence the invisible. We talked about how if everybody turned up at work but only using half of their skill, this would be invisible. And that's the trouble. A lot of things are invisible. And in businesses, we really don't know how far short of 100% we are, because we can't dig into people's brains and find out whether they're completely committed. So if you think about leaders, then the results are the bit of the iceberg that's at the top. So you get certain results, you get certain profits, you get certain things that businesses make, certain new products, whatever it might be. There are certain results that businesses have, and these are usually visible. That's the top of the iceberg. Now, what produces those is, in the wider sense, behavior. Behavior is what people do. So people do stuff and they produce results. And that behavior is happening all the time, more or less. And it's a little bit below the surface because you're not tracking it a lot of the time. And what informs that behavior, what actually makes people do the things that they do, again, on the wider scale, it's those two. It's emotions and it's thinking. What do they think? What beliefs do they have? What assumptions do they have? What habits do they have? And the equivalent of business thinking there is procedures. Businesses have certain procedures that they go through, ways that things are done that are repeated and repeatable. And that's the equivalent of a habit of an individual. And the great thing about a habit is you don't have to think about it. You just do it. It's just, comes out as behavior. It's like automatic. And the trouble with change, when you want to change, is that those habits work against you, because habits are exactly those things that you do without thinking. And when you want to change, you need to think and have options. So once we start coaching, once leaders start working, they need to change the thinking of, well, their own thinking first, and thinking of the people, and also the procedures and systems, perhaps in the business, that businesses have. And I think it's quite interesting, having coached in many businesses, people complain about procedures, they complain about the systems that are in place. They wish that they could bypass them, or they complain that they're slow or they don't work or something like that. And many people feel victims of that. They feel powerless. They feel that the system is bigger than they are, which in a sense it is, but they forget that that system didn't exist without people who built it. Now, if people built the system, then people can unbuild the system, or they can build another one. It's not something that's fixed forever. It's something that was put together by people for certain reasons, and now maybe needs to be looked at carefully, just like habits, because certainly procedures in a business, they're built on the past. They're built on what worked in the past, and with technology, with global communications markets moving so quickly now, that some procedures get out of date within almost before they've been codified on paper. All procedures, all thinking, I think, has a date stamp on it, or should have a date stamp on it. Just like food, food, when you buy food, it says good up to a certain date, and after that date you don't eat it. And I think that systems and procedures and habits should have a sell-by date as well, because they may not be still appropriate, the best thing to do at a certain date, because the environment, the market, the business, the person moves on. And we've talked about emotions as well, the feeling, the values, the energy that goes behind what people do. So people need to be persuaded that it makes sense, and this may mean a change in habits of what they're going to be doing to break that inertia that people have. It's easiest to do nothing. It's always easiest to do nothing. It's always easiest to stick with the status quo. And usually leaders aren't about the status quo. Leaders are about change into something else. There's a vision in the future that is definitely not the status quo. But it's hard to get past that original kind of inertia, hard to get things moving. Once things moving, then it's easier to keep it moving. But at the beginning, it's hard to get it moving, and that's what emotions, that's what that energy can do. So that's what leaders do, and of course you can see very much that's what coaches do as well. And coaches help to develop authentic leaders. Authentic leaders look to the long term. Authentic leaders will look to something that's sustainable and driven by values, not just kind of short-term fix. Authentic leaders will not be motivated by greed. They are there for their people. They're not manipulative. They don't grab power. They don't give a kind of me first, self-serving, narcissistic at the expense of others. Unfortunately, there are people in positions of power who think like that. You know, they're interested in manipulating others. They're trying to get something for themselves at the expense of others. They can be quite ruthless and focused on results and use people to do that. And unfortunately, that can have short-term, well, it very often has short-term success, may not, but the short-term success is always with a personal cost and doesn't work in the long term. So authentic leaders don't do this. They look to the long term, they're driven by values, they connect, they tell a story to people that really makes sense, that everybody's in it together. So some people in business and some people feel like victims. They feel blamed and they blame others. They react to things rather than trying to do things. You know, they just, you know, get the orders from people and do it or not do it. They don't think for themselves necessarily. They try to control a lot. They have many expectations, and expectations are something that you expect to happen. They're not goals. You can expect someone to make a report or do something in your business, but if you haven't communicated with them and don't tell them, then that expectation is useless unless they've bought into it. In other words, you haven't got agreement. You've got an expectation on one side, but not an agreement from the other. And expectations lead inevitably to disappointments. If you expect something and you haven't agreed and connected with other people, you will be disappointed. And then that's where people blame others. You know, I thought they'd do this and they didn't. It's their fault. I'm disappointed. And I'm going to try and control it more in future. And that's a kind of style sometimes that people work in business. It's also a style that people can get into just generally in their life, which coaching can help to break, to stop, and also, of course, to break that kind of vicious circle that can happen in a business. So if we call that victim, victim is someone who feels powerless. They are in the power of other people or in the power of the system, but whatever they're in the power of, it's not them. And it's not very pleasant either to be like that. So if we oppose that with what we might call an owner or an author. An author is an interesting word in English, actually, because if you think about an author of a book, say, that's someone who's creative, someone who's made that, someone who's done it from themselves. But the other word that comes from it is authority. And authority, of course, is talking about power. And power is quite different from creativity. So we talk about an authority, someone who has power over us. And that's not the sort of authorship that we talk about. So I think it's important to make a distinction between the authority of people who have power in a hierarchy and authorship, the ability to create, to be the owner of what you do and your own life and your own business. And owners are responsible. They respond to others. They don't react to others. They see opportunities where others may see difficulties. They are creative, so they actually create things. They work by choice and agreements, so the less constraints they have, the less habits of thinking that stop them, the more choices they have, the more they can fashion their story. And they make agreements with people, agreements where two people agree to do something. And of course, if you're going to be a leader, you need agreements. Agreements are what leaders do with their followers, because if if followers don't agree to follow, then how can you say that there's a leader? So those are two fundamentally different orientations in business and in life. And a coach will develop the owner and seek to stop the victim, just as a leader needs to do that for their business and for themselves. And this, of course, these two orientations lead to two different ways of running a business. One is what I've called mediocre management, which is controlling, reactive, exploiting, blaming, where everybody's so concerned about covering themselves that nothing gets done very much. People feel exploited, people are jumping all the time, and people feel controlled or controlling. This is not good. This is nothing to do with authentic leadership. And authentic leadership is about permission, giving permission, about being creative, letting people create, about serving others, about what can they do for others. The best leaders, in a sense, are in the service of others. They don't try to control them, push them. And developing, they develop people. They develop other leaders. They develop people in their organization. So, two very different ways of running a business and two very different ways of running your life. Now you might ask, how do we evaluate the impact of leadership development? So we need to do some measurements. We can measure behavior. We can measure behavior, certainly. We're talking about that iceberg. We can measure what people do. We can measure their skills. We can measure even their feelings if we ask them about them. We can, in the end, see what coaching is doing, the return on investment. If you're going to evaluate the impact of coaching, then the kind of the highest level of that is to evaluate the return on investment. In other words, for every dollar that you put into coaching, how many do you get back? It's only one measurement because there are other intangibles, but it's an important measurement. It's also difficult to do because you need to calculate all the costs of the coaching, and it's not just about paying the coach, it's all the hidden costs as well of the disruption of the business and the time taken and everything else. And then you need to make some measurement about, well, how much money, what increase in profit did we get, and how much of that then can we attribute to coaching. So this is why there aren't so many return on investment studies. I did one with Citibank in Europe when I was doing coaching with them there, and from their calculations the return on investment was between 16 and 47 times the investment. In other words, for every dollar they put into coaching, they reckon they got back at least 16 and at most 47. And the reality is somewhere in between the two. Now that's a pretty good return on investment. If I could put my money in a bank for a couple of years and get 16% back on it, I would be very, very happy indeed. And this is why measurement of coaching is really important, because just anecdotally, just people say, yeah, we had some coaching, it was great, we really think it did us a lot of good, and we think the business is better. Well, okay, it's better than saying we had coaching and we didn't like it, we didn't think it did the business any good. But if you think that it did the business some good, then it's really good to know in some kind of terms what good it did. So that return on investment, I have that case study with Citibank. If anybody's interested in that, I'm very happy to send you the references to that. You can see exactly what coaching can do. And it wasn't just about financial reward. It was about people feeling more free. It was about having more products, creating more products afterwards. It was about people asking more questions. And the best of all was the particular department. Other departments used to say about them, if you want something done, go to them. And that's a great feedback, because it's not something that they themselves generated. It's something that other people see in them and then talk about. So that's always the best feedback, you know, when other people say, wow, you've really changed, you know, you're really different, you're really more happy and creative. And you go, yeah, great, I've had some coaching. So then, there are many aspects to this, not just money. Money does matter, does count, but there's also more intangible aspects of feeling, of happiness. But if we think about a challenge, how can we generate a good return on investment? How can you, in your business, use coaching to get a return on investment, a financial return on investment and an intangible return on investment, whereby people work better, whereby somehow you know that they're not there working on 50% of their potential, they're working on something much more, that's gone up. So, well, I've spoken coming up for an hour. I think that's probably enough. So then I'd like to open to any questions, comments, doubts from anyone who's listening. So please, if you'd like to ask a question and you have a microphone that works, put up your hand and Abigail will engage the microphone so that you can speak and we can all hear you. Otherwise, please type the question into the box and Abigail will read them out. So over to you guys.
We have a few questions from Rude. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Apologies if I'm not. So his first question is, what is your opinion regarding the solution-focused method?
Well, the solution for... I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but let me say what I think you mean, and then you can tell me whether it's right. Solution-focused was originally used in therapy, and it's about focusing very much on what you want, so very much about goals rather than what all went wrong, because a lot of therapy delves in great detail into the past and, you know, what went wrong and how bad it was and everything else, on the premise that exploring the past will help you to get over it. I'm not convinced about that. So in those terms, solution-focused is about looking to the future and about thinking, well, what do you actually want to happen? So it's very much in line with what I was talking about for coaching. Key question, where do you want to be? It's focused on the future, it's focused on the solution, and let's not forget that you also need to look at the present, because the present moment you will find what is constraining you from getting to the future. Because if there wasn't something constraining you in the present, you'd be there. You know, you'd just be jumping there. And in therapy, the best question to ask, and it's a very good coaching question too, is the kind of miracle question, they call it, which is if you could solve this problem, whatever the problem might be, if you could solve this problem, if it was like magic, if I could wave my magic wand and this problem would be, you'd wake up tomorrow morning and the problem would be solved. Describe your day. Describe what's there. So you're putting people into their desired and imagined future, and you're asking them to describe it. So it's a very nice way of getting people to be clear about their solution, which they may not have been before, because many people just want to get away from where they are. And of course, if you just get away from where you are, you can go anywhere. But the solution focus says, well, let's think about where you want to go as much detail as possible, and then we'll think about how we're going to get there. So in that sense, solution focused is very much inherent in coaching.
Great, thank you so much. We have a question from Yanti. The question is, how do we start if we want to develop a coaching culture in an organization?
Oh, well, coaching culture, of course, is about general values and expectations within the organization. So let me give a short answer to this, because it's a huge question. You need to start somewhere, and it's usually easiest to start at the top, because if you start at the top with the leaders and executives, then they are the people that will lead the organization, and they're the ones that will let the coaching culture go downwards into the organization. If you try to introduce coaching culture into an organization without engaging the leaders, then probably it won't work. It's very difficult to do. I'm not sure that it's even possible. It may do. So I've certainly, I've been part of coaching initiatives where the leaders get up on stage in front of everybody and they say, look, I'm having coaching, we're doing coaching, it's great, we're going to initiate coaching plans and training, and that's how it's going to be. And that's really good, because it really gets people awake. One of the worst things that happens with people in a business is that they get instructions from above which they have to do, and they can see quite clearly that their leaders are not doing it themselves. So the leaders are not walking the talk, and this is very demotivating, because if somebody tells you to do something and they're not doing it, then you're entitled to ask, well, if it's so great, why aren't you doing it? That's the old thing about bringing up children. Do as I do, do as I say, not as I do. that never works with children. They just say, well, if doing this is so great, why aren't you doing it? So you've got to engage the leaders. The only other thing, if you can't engage the leaders, is that if you have a kind of little guerrilla group inside the organization, and they've got to be extremely energetic, extremely committed, and get very good results, significantly better results than the rest of the organization. And when that happens, people will gravitate towards them and say, hey, what you doing? What's your secret? And they go, well, it's coaching. Oh, can we try some? And then it kind of spreads out like that. But that's significantly more difficult.
Great. We have a question from Jose from Spain. So he's saying, good morning, Joseph. Thanks for the presentation. I'd like to ask, is it possible to work and live as a coach in a world dominated, in Spain for example, by psychologists, university studies with a regulated profession? If so, how? Thank you.
Well, is it possible? Yes, why not? I know people who make a living from coaching. So in Spain. So it's quite possible. Spain is alive and well and flourishing. Coaching in Spain is alive and well and flourishing. So is Spain, of course. Now, yes, psychologists are important, and psychology is the study of mind and behavior. So psychologists study mind and behavior in a structured way, in a scientific way. And that's fine, and that's important, no doubt about it. Coaches don't do that. Coaches engage more in the practical level. They need to get people moving. They get, there's lots of theories of coaching and theories of leadership, but in the end, the leaders have got to do stuff, and the coaches have got to inspire people and get people to act. So I'm all in favor of psychologists exploring and giving good models and showing what doesn't work, which is a scientific method. You can say what doesn't work. But I would draw the line at psychologists saying you can't use anything except those things that we haven't yet proved don't work, because it's a different domain. So we can learn from psychologists. We should all be evidence-based coaches. In other words, we should base our coaching and our results on evidence, not on anecdotes and things that we think might help. So I think it's our responsibility to talk to psychologists, learn as much as possible from all sorts of areas, and then to apply it. And for me, the metaphor is a bit like cooking. A psychologist is like a nutritional analyst, a nutritionist. A nutritionist is someone who studies the nutrition and the carbohydrates and the fats and the protein and vitamins and everything, and they put together recipes and they say, look, this is what's a balanced diet, and they know a lot about nutrition. And then the coach is the chef. So the chef goes to the nutritionist and reads the nutrition. Sure, they do. So they're not going to serve up, something that's full of fat and carbohydrate and sugar and nothing much else. So they listen to the nutritionist, but at the same time they do the cooking, and they're the ones that put the things together in a way that really matters for the person who's got to eat it, because nobody eats a recipe. People eat food. So that's my metaphor for psychologists and coaches. I think they can get along perfectly well as long as they don't overstep the bounds of what they think what they can do.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Nasrun, and it is, how can we get people to lead by values rather than greed when there are so many other influences?
To lead by values. Well, it depends on the values, of course. I mean, values, in a sense, everybody leads by values. It just depends what the values are. If the values are the sort of thing that we've been talking about, with regard to, service and responsibility, creativity, choice, making agreements. This is great. If you lead by values that are about controlling people and reacting and blaming and exploiting, then this is not great. So I would say that everybody leads by values. The point is, what values do they lead by? And how inspiring is this for other people? Because someone who leads by control, exploiting, blaming, not inspiring, not going to lead people. They're going to push people. They're going to pull people, they're having to force people through authority. That's not leadership that will inspire people. So, we talk about leading by values. I think we need to talk about, well, what values are leaders going to lead by, and how can we develop those values in leaders? And again, I think coaching comes into this significantly.
Great.
Good. Thank you for all these questions. Very interesting. What else?
Yeah, we have a few more. Samuel, for instance, from Hong Kong, People's Republic of China, is saying, thanks for sharing, Joseph. Will you share any good tools to record the leadership coaching during the December seminar?
Sorry, will I record? Sorry, I didn't quite understand the question.
Will you share any...
Am I recording something? Or? Yeah.
Will you share any good tools to record the leadership coaching during the December seminar?
Yes. Yes. Hi to you in Hong Kong. I've been to Hong Kong many times. I think it's a wonderful place. I really enjoy it. So in terms of the coaching certification, yes, there are lots of tools, leadership tools in terms of structures of questions to get values, to explore goals, in terms of specific models that we use. Some of them are visual models that we use to help coaches and to help their clients. And of course measurement, how to measure the kinds of things. So if you want the full story, I say come to the certification training. We can only do just a touch on things here.
Great, we are having many questions here. So just a second. Okay, so Sophia is asking, what instruments do you recommend coaches to apply in leadership coaching?
I'm not sure what Sophia means by instruments. When I first heard that question, I thought guitar, so clearly you don't mean that sort of instrument. So maybe you could type in again what you mean by instruments, and then I can answer that. Abigail will pick it up again.
I will get back to that. Angie is asking, what would you say are the most important aspects to focus on in order to pursue a serious career as a coach?
Serious career as a coach, you're going to need a number of things. You're going to need tools, of course, models of coaching. You're going to need communication skills in the terms of your presence as a coach, your ability to be present and listen in a session. You're going to need commitment, your own passion, and you're going to need marketing skills, which many people forget. But any profession like coaching, any profession at all, you can be a great coach, wonderful coach, but if you don't have any clients, then this is very sad. And it's a bit like, do leaders exist without followers? Do coaches exist without clients? Yes, but only potentially. So coaches need clients, and the way to get clients is to market yourself as a coach. And this is a skill of ethical marketing that we also talk a little bit about in the certification training. So, we aim not to just send you away with a lot of skills, but actually with a way to get some clients to use them on. Yeah, so that would be my immediate answer to what do you need to pursue a serious career as a coach.
Mm-hmm. We have another question from Nuno. He's saying, thank you, Joseph, for the talk. How would you explain the main difference between business coaching skills and life coaching skills? Is it a matter of tools or more a matter of mindset or something else?
Well, it's a matter of content, really. Life coaching is the widest kind of chunk that we have, because person's life. So if you're a life coach, then basically people come to you, and they usually pay themselves to come to you, so they are the client as well as the payer, They're the economic client as well as the real client. And you explore in their life what they present to you, and this can be mostly around financial, relationship issues, all sorts of things, family issues, tends to cluster around those. Now business coaching is about coaching in a business, so then you have an extra layer on top, which is first of all that the content that you talk about in business coaching is going to be about business, about what's happening in the business, about managing, about meetings, about all these sorts of things. And of course the business is the economic client, but the actual client will be a manager person within that business. So that gives you then a different kind of perspective, because you're being paid by the business, therefore the business wants business results, things that translate into benefit for the business, including money. And the client wants things that work for them, of course. So there's a little bit of a dynamic going on there, where the coach needs to balance those things out. Now that being said, of course, what happens in business coaching is that the manager, let's say there's a manager, has a coach, and yes, they do talk about their business and how they can be a better manager and the kinds of challenges that they face, but also they're going to talk about their family, about their relationships, about all the sorts of things that might normally, we might think, fall into life coaching, simply because life is bigger than business. So in that sense, life coaching includes business coaching, but people market themselves primarily as a life coach, dealing with non-business issues, or as a business coach where they will have some business expertise and business experience, whereby they are competent to go into a business and deal with business issues on behalf of the business, as well as the sorts of life issues that a manager or executive may throw at them. So but the methodology is the same. So, with the ICC training, we train coaches who can then apply their skills to life coaching or business coaching.
Great. We have Samuel with a very specific question. Should I open the microphone for him?
Yeah, sure.
Good. Just a second. Hi, Samuel, can you hear us? Hello? Samuel, are you there?
No, it doesn't sound like it. Maybe Samuel can type the question.
Yeah, I have it. His question is, I really think I will attend the seminar in December, as I run my own company association in Hong Kong, People's Republic of China. I was wondering what kind of cooperation or benefit could the seminar generate in my case?
I think it can generate a lot as a business owner without knowing your particular circumstances. I think that the course will grow you as a person in yourself. I think that you will be bringing your personal and professional problems, issues, situations to the course, and have the opportunity to be coached on them, to help to solve them, just as an extra benefit, as it were. You're learning coaching, but of course there's a lot of practical stuff goes on inside whereby you get coached. So there's an immediate benefit there. It will help you to be a leader, because a leader needs a coaching element in the way that they engage with people. And I think it will also help you to start perhaps to begin what we were calling a coaching culture within the business, whereby the people in your business will be able to be more creative and give more of their potential. It would be really nice if people had a kind of thermometer on their head, this is how much of my potential I'm bringing into work today. and that it was immediately visible. And if it was, you could get immediate feedback that people were bringing in more of themselves to work. But that's what that would be another business. So I would say business benefits, personal benefits, problem-solving benefits, a lot of benefits for you.
Great. We have another question from Ruth. It is, how do you deal with a leader who is coaching him or herself? Coaching a coach.
Sorry, how do you coach a coach?
Yep.
Oh, well, you coach a coach in the same way you coach anybody else, because when a coach, a client is a client. Okay, so if I'm a coach and I'm coaching a client, then my client is my client, and I engage with them as a client. Now, that client may be a coach that may be their day job, and that's fine. They'll bring forward issues and problems and ideas from their day job, and we'll deal with them in the same way as if they were a IT specialist or a long-distance runner or anything else. So that's, and by the way, it's really great for a coach to have a coach. It's this thing about walking your talk. If coaching's so great, why haven't you got one? and sometimes coaches mumble and say, well, okay, but I'm a coach myself. But it's good for coaches to have a coach. So that's one answer. The other answer is that coaches often have supervision, and supervision is not coaching. Supervision is helping the coach be a better coach in relation to their clients. So that's not coaching, that's supervision, and that's another story. And in fact, we have an ICC course on supervision that I'm running at the moment in a series of webinars. So we do teach supervision, but that's different to coaching.
Great. We have the answer from Sophia. She had asked before which instrument do you recommend for executive coaching, and she explains now she means instruments in the sense of tools such as wheels.
Oh, wheels. Well, you can certainly have a wheel of executive coaching. You can make a wheel of anything. A wheel would simply be a circle divided into a number of segments, not more than 8, which has a number of distinctions in it. So you can have a leadership wheel, you can have an executive wheel, and these distinctions, you can have a competence wheel. These distinctions will be the competences that the leaders want, and then they can score themselves on that. So they say, well, I think I'm pretty good on this, not so good on this, 50% on this, 100% on this. This is where I could develop. So a wheel, as you speak about it, is a measurement. It's a way of measuring where you are right now. And you can also measure where you want to be. You can put a measurement of where you want to be. So there's a lot of grids that we use and a lot of wheels. And the key to these tools are the distinctions that you make. And a distinction is a concept that you deal with. And distinctions can be limiting if you make limiting distinctions. For example, the distinction about expectation versus agreement. So expectation means I expect you to do that, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to necessarily ask you or agree with you, but if you don't do it, then I'm going to be upset. You should know. And an agreement distinction is, well, we're going to agree that you do this, and we're going to make sure that it happens. We're going to agree a time and place and everything else. And we're going to agree that if for some reason you can't meet that agreement, we renegotiate before the time deadline. Yeah, it's no good negotiating after the time deadline. Sorry, I couldn't do it. We need to renegotiate before. So if you say you're going to hand in a paper to me in 2 weeks' time and you find that you can't do it, then you come to me and say, look, I don't think I can do 2 weeks. This is the reason why. And then we renegotiate. So, those kinds of distinctions about how we think about things are very important, and those are the things that we use in the tools. So it's about the distinctions that the tools embody that's important rather than the tools themselves.
Great. Ruth is telling us, I just finished an NLP coaching course, but there are so many ways of coaching. Do you need an executive coaching training to coach leaders? What is specific about it?
Well, the ICC training we make quite eclectic in the sense that we draw on a lot of different models. NLP certainly, ontological coaching certainly, this is more from Spain and South America, integral coaching models, positive psychology coaching models, what else? The kind of inner game coaching models. There are a lot of models. There are so many, in fact, that Andrea and I wrote a book called How Coaching Works, which takes the top 6 models present in the world at the moment of coaching and shows what they have in common. Because some people focus too much on on how they're different. But what do they have in common? How come they're all called coaching? And they all have a lot in common. So in the ICC, we basically give you a lot of tools drawn from different places so that you're not constrained by one particular model of coaching, and you're free to explore all different sorts of other models and to work them into your unique identity as a coach.
Great. Philip is asking us, if you don't succeed in your coaching, should you leave the dialogue?
If you don't succeed in the coaching, if I'm going to understand this as if you're coaching somebody and it's not working, then, well, again, it depends what sort of feedback mechanisms and agreements you have in place. I have an agreement whereby whenever I engage a client, either of us can withdraw. I can withdraw if I see that the client is not engaging in the coaching and not doing the tasks, and the client can withdraw if they're not getting the results that they want. I've never had either happen yet, but then there is a model and an agreement that says if that happens, the money that would be paid is shared out among charities that we nominate. So you remember I'm talking about commitment. If a client knows that they are going to pay for the coaching, then they're more likely to be committed to it. If they think that, well, if it doesn't work, I can always get my money back, then that's going to work against their commitment. So that's why the fee, if it's, if the coaching doesn't work out, my particular way of handling that is that the fee is donated to a charity that's agreed between coach and client. So that's the kind of end game if it really doesn't work out. And yes, you leave the dialogue, but not before exploring exactly what's going on and what's not happening. So that there is an agreement that it's not working and not just somebody's going, oh, well, I don't think I'll carry on with this anymore.
Great. We have another question from Monica, and it is, what is the main difference between executive coaching and leadership coaching? Is it the approach, the model, the tools, personality, or experiences of the coach?
Could be any of them, but basically leadership coaching is coaches who coach leaders. So it tends to be executive coaching. So you're coaching at a high level. It's called kind of C-level coaching. Chief executive officer, chief officer, C, begins with C, your title begins with C. So people who have an executive and leadership function, that's leadership coaching, developing, but also coaches in business can develop leaders in that business as well. So it's partly a mindset, it's partly a developed set of skills, and it's partly a clientele that you specialize in. So just coming up here, I'll take one more question, and then I think we'll call it a day.
Okay. We have a question from Rude, and it is, do you consider a personal coach to be a social entrepreneur?
I'm not sure. A social entrepreneur. I think that coaches can have a great effect on our society. They can have a great effect on business by making a business working better. and businesses have a very great influence on our society. I think leadership coaching can have a huge influence on our society because we follow leaders. You know, I'd love to be able to coach some politicians. So in that sense, yes, if an entrepreneur is someone who takes initiative to do things, usually on their own or in a small group, and a social entrepreneur is someone who influences society through their entrepreneurial efforts, then absolutely I would define a coach as a social entrepreneur. So thank you very much. That's excellent questions. If you want to discover more, please write to me or Irene about the coaching certification that we're going to be having in Jakarta in December. And thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed, and hope to see you virtually, if not in person, at another time. So thanks very much.